Hi there, welcome to this Dimension Data Google Hangout on managing the data center of the future. My name is Stuart Fox, I'm the Group Director of Business Development of our Data Center Business Unit, and I'm based here in wonderful sunny New York, as you can see. And with me I have some colleagues who I'd like to introduce you to. John, why don't you say hello and introduce yourself there?
Yes, hey, I'm John Fiscus. I'm a transformational sales consultant based out of beautiful Atlanta, Georgia. And I don't have the same view you have, but it is pretty nice down here. So good to see you, Stuart.
Fantastic. I see you wrote it behind you as well on the screen, just in case I forgot. It's pretty cool.
If you need a little help, it's right here.
Excellent. And all the way down under from the city where I actually grew up, we have Chris. Chris, why don't you say hello there?
Hi guys, Chris Noonan from Melbourne in Victoria, Australia. So it's about 3 a.m. in the morning here, so I got the curtains drawn and it's a little bit dark, but we're up and about servicing our customers 24/7, which is the DD way after all, right guys?
That's fantastic. Look, hopefully, thanks for joining us, and I know it's late or early morning, late night, and hopefully, well, it depends which way, whether you've slept or about to sleep. So it's great that you could join us. So. I think we're also hopefully being joined by Alex Watson-Jackson, I think, who's our Business Development Manager for Europe, and he's based out of London. I think he's having a couple of challenges where he is at the moment, but hopefully he'll join us through the show. Look, if you do have any questions during the Hangout, please use the hashtag #DDHangouts, and that way we can get back to you with any answers to your questions that you might have during the show. So, look, with that, let's get started. So, first of all, I think why managing the data center of the future, and what do we mean by this? I mean, well, I think, look, we all know, I think, that the IT industry is going through a massive transformation, maybe the biggest transformation in decades, right? I mean, we see this in our day-to-day lives, just the way we're using different technologies. I mean, we were just commenting, a few minutes ago before we went live. It isn't amazing how we can all come together across the globe and do these things even 10 years ago that wasn't really available. I mean, and then you see things like Netflix and Uber and all that sort of stuff, right? So at the heart of all this, from a technology perspective, is really the data center. Okay. Now we all meet clients every day, and we know from meeting our clients that CEOs are under enormous pressure, right? They're under pressure to lower cost and reduce capex, and they're there trying to support more projects that really focus on delivering business outcomes. They also tell us, right, that they're under enormous pressure to reduce risk and improve that experience for their customers and grow revenue. I mean, examples of that is how people are looking at their digital strategy and so on. So you take all of this, right, and this is putting this strain on the CIO, right? How does the CIO, how does the IT inside an organization transform to deliver all this to the business, at least from an IT perspective? And then from an IT operations perspective, we know they've got challenges, right? And we're often asked about options, today as well as in the future, right? So how do they standardize the data center infrastructure and simplify IT management? So look, Chris and John, I know you've both been involved in client engagements in this area, particularly recently. Perhaps you wouldn't mind just, sharing with us some of your experience. Maybe you could talk a little bit about the challenges that some of our clients have faced that you've been working with, how they evaluated their options, and how they selected and implemented those options and why. Maybe Chris, it's late down there. I'm feeling sorry for you. So maybe we start with you, Chris.
Yeah, no worries, Stuart. I think I agree with a lot of those trends that you're talking to. I mean, in our market, I guess our market's no different to a lot of the markets around the world. We're seeing a couple of big trends in the business that's really impacting them and driving them. The first trend is, as you said, that pressure to grow and transform, and I guess to compete in a digitally connected world. Externally, for those customers, it's about going online, pushing out new products and services into the market, and trying to get their head around new channels like social media and how they're going to use those. But there's a lot of activity happening internally within clients as well. So they're trying to digitise really major processes. If you look at like supply chain and some of those end-to-end processes where they want to become more efficient, for example. And I guess the proof point for me too, as well, in all of that, there's a lot of activity. But in Australia, we acquired an application consulting house called Open about 12 months ago. And when I talk to the Open guys, they're saying a lot of their consulting work has now shifted towards helping customers how to go digital, well, helping them understand that. And all of this activity, I guess, is really generating a massive amount of information. I mean, we've seen that in terms of the rise of big data. And so the other trend we're seeing there is big data within the organisation really driving a different skill set that the business needs. And at some level, the business is then looking at IT and saying, well, can you guys help us with this skill set so we can move forward? And again, in some of the organisations in Australia, we're seeing different roles pop up. So, think about the CDO, the Chief Digital Officer. We're starting to see that sort of role evolve in organisations, and that person's responsible for hiring these new roles, like business analysts, data analysts, and so on. So I think the net of all that is that the business is moving really fast. They want agility, they need time to market, they need time to value. And I think, the market's also then evolved around consumptive services. So at some level, the market's really meeting that requirement. But if the IT department isn't able to provide those sort of consumptive services, then the business will just walk around them. So, what we call shadow IT, where that's really on the increase, because it's so easy now for the business just to consume those sorts of services like SaaS models, application as a service, all enabled by cloud. Another example in Melbourne, I guess, was one of the major banks here. The CIO publicly said she wasn't going to do the cloud thing, as it were. The IT department didn't have a cloud strategy, weren't looking at consumptive services, but they thought maybe the business is playing with it a little bit. We might need to go and find out about that. So they actually asked us to come in and do an assessment for them. So we ran that assessment, and we actually discovered that there was about 600 cloud-based services being consumed as applications, around IT. So there's a big message for IT at that point that, if you can't stay relevant and if you can't keep up, then the business will go around you anyway. And I guess the other observation, in terms of the market there is one of the downstream impacts is effectively the budget shifting away from IT. So if they can't keep up, the business will just start to control the spending, control their own destiny because they're under so much pressure. So I think there's a big relevancy question here for IT as we go forward. The other trend we're seeing is, of course, which has always been there, but I think it's tightly linked to that pressure I'm talking about that the business is under around, say, the digital economy is, the whole cost out paradigm. That's always been there, but it's accelerating as well. So, as you said before, Stuart, the CFO is definitely saying to the CIO, I need to take cost out, or you need to take cost out, let's say 8 to 10% year on year. We need to free up cash so we can fund that grow and transform agenda. And the real kicker is, we need you to make the infrastructure more reliable at the same time, because it's more mission critical now in terms of what we're doing. We're global, we're growing, we're transforming. All the applications need to run 24/7 with more online. So that's a couple of the major trends I see coming into the business. I guess we probably see IT responding in a couple of different ways to try and help out with that. They're looking at converged infrastructure to reduce that footprint, to take cost out, obviously. I think, critically, they're also trying to change their sourcing strategies. IT know they can't buy and build these consumptive services quick enough, right? It's going to take them 2 to 3 years to do that. So they're really looking to suppliers like us to get to that management and that automation to not only do the cost out piece, but also improve their availability. And then thirdly, I think one of the key things is as they start to acquire those, consumptive services, they start to free up their people so they can really start to retrain their people out of the run function and start to reskill them and point them at those big data and digital skill sets that the business is really looking for. And then over time, to answer that relevancy question, that starts to reposition IT into a much more strategic partner where they can have the right conversations with the business. So I think for us as a supplier, we're working really hard with the sales teams in Australia. We're trying to have a couple of different conversations. That business level conversation to really tap in above the CIO, get to the CFO, get to different business stakeholders, the marketing guys, head of sales, head of HR. trying to genuinely understand their business challenges as it relates to, you know, that pressure of the digital economy, some of the services and what they want to see out of that paradigm. And then the other conversation that we're really trying to develop with the sales guys is, as you said before, you know, quite a good point around the operations side of IT. Quite often we talk to the transform side of the house, but really understanding the customer's pain points around operations, you know, people, tools, process. Quite a different conversation for us. But, you know, we can then start to show the client how management and automation can mature their operations and take costs out at the same time. So, you know, probably covered a fair bit there in terms of, you know, two major trends we're seeing that's putting the business under pressure. Probably 3 or 4 ways IT's responding to try and help with it, with those two main trends in the business. And then, you know, from a sales perspective in Australia, how they're engaging around a couple of different conversations to try and help the customer with that and help them understand our value, particularly around management and automation in the data centre. And John, I know you're from a different region from me. Obviously, I'd be interested to hear if you're seeing similar trends in your market, and you know what some of the experiences you're having, I guess, with your clients where they're looking for, you know, some of that agility, time to market, time to value, and automation, and some of those trends. What are you seeing in your local market?
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks. It's funny, we're seeing the same thing, right? I think if I were to summarize what you were talking about there too, it's the idea of speed, cost, and risk, right? So the challenges haven't changed that much for my clients and the folks that we work with. It's just the way in which we address those challenges, I think, and maybe the intensity of those challenges, right? That our customers are faced with levels of speed and expectation of the business that they haven't had in the past, and they haven't been able to address it. So the funny part, or the ironic part about this is you mentioned complexity, right? So they're dealing with the idea of having to have the ability to provide this in an environment of, are they moving towards multi-tenant cloud environments, right? Am I being more nimble by moving towards a cloud? That would be one component. Then they still have legacy systems that have to be compliant and up and 100% availability, right? So they've got these environments that are complex, right? The idea of delivering business value is a huge key for all the leadership and for IT in general. You know, one of my clients one time, I was asking him how he's supporting the business, and his response to me was, "I don't support the business. I am the business." Right? That's the big the aha moment. Is we are supporting the business. We're not supporting IT. And I think what IT departments now are doing, to your point, is they're moving towards business value. How do they deliver that? How do they deliver whatever they deliver with speed? The agile and DevOps processes, as well as just reducing risk all throughout that, and then doing that in a way that they're aligning their costs with their IT costs with their revenues. And maybe I'll pause for a second. Welcome Alex to the call. Looks like we've got Alex joining.
Hello. Yeah, had a few issues with Google's Hangouts there, and I've now finally got it to link. So. Hey, I'm with you.
Excellent. Welcome to the call. So I wanted to address you joining in. So what I was just talking about is what we're seeing here in the U.S. So the ironic part is, right, you've got the businesses have similar needs, but the way we address it now is even more complex. Like the data center of the future, while we would love to think that it's getting more simplistic, is actually getting more complex, because it is, not only is it global, but it is multimodal, right? So you've got DevOps, and you've got, I mentioned agile, and you've got standard IT infrastructure, all blending together with different systems, internal, external, outsourced data centers, multi-tenant clouds, and these are all coming together to deliver for the business based on what the business requirements are. Like, I think about one of my clients here in the U.S. is they're a building products company. And they're working to become more efficient, right? As any manufacturer works to get more efficient on their manufacturing process, they're trying to remove constraints, make faster decisions, resulting in better quality business growth and revenue growth, but also reduction in cost. So they're doing that through a project around big data, right? So they're looking to leverage information they have to make more rapid decisions for the business. Well, it's really about being able to go closer and closer to a just-in-time, real inventory type of environment, So what they've done is they've moved to a methodology of infrastructure in just-in-time, moving towards what I think what Chris talked about earlier is consumption IT. And what we're helping them with is we're providing them infrastructure that will scale for their big data, business intelligence environment that is then going to provide them information to make better quality decisions to scale more effectively in their inventory supply chain, right? So they're aligning IT practices with manufacturing practices. So it's very, very, very cool to see how they're doing that, and they're doing it in a way where they're consuming technology. From there, I would say you have that consumption model, and you're moving it away from internal, and then it's adding complexity. So they no longer have IT running this external environment. The concern is that now I've got multi-environments. How do I control that, right? So the idea of I'm trying to get faster, I'm trying to do it more cost effectively, I'm trying to do it with reduced risk, but now I've actually gained some risk because I no longer, or my perceived risk is that I no longer control that infrastructure. Well, so what service providers like Dimension Data do is we provide as much possible information in a single pane of glass to our customers to make better quality decisions on that infrastructure. So if you're consuming IT as a service, so for your planning for scale, for the ability to align your IT infrastructure with the needs of the business, we provide things really even at a business layer of dashboard information to our customers to make better quality decisions and be aware and provide the uptime that their business needs. So as this data center, the next generation data center becomes more complex, how do we provide more information, more control to streamline the ability for a company to manage that? That's a key. And another example is one of our customers here in the U.S. is a large pharmaceutical company, and they're expanding some applications that historically have been just in the U.S., expanding it globally. And they're expanding it on infrastructure that is best of breed, but they didn't have resources in themselves. So they essentially look to a partner like us to provide those services and avoid the risk of having to spool up additional internal resources and infrastructure to provide that level of service. So we're giving them, again, the ability to have infrastructure on a global scale, provide better quality service to their end user, and then also limit their risk on having to build out people, process, and technology internally, and moving that risk to really to us as a service provider, providing it in a consumption way as they need it. So I'd say, if I were to think similar issues to what you mentioned, Chris, it's about speed. How do we provide everything we want to do faster for our customer? It's about how do we reduce risk, right? How do we deliver the business and carry less risk as a portion of the business? And then how do we do that and align our costs? How do we consume IT in a way that it delivers for the business in the most efficient manner? So yeah, so I think it's consistent global challenges that everyone faces, and the way in which we're addressing it now, it does add to a layer of complexity, and that's why solution providers like Dimension Data are working to help give that view to reduce that complexity for our clients, giving them more control and more visibility into the way they support their business. So yeah, I'd say that that's something that we're seeing here and that we're hoping to deliver for our customers on a regular basis. So Alex, with you on board now, I just wanted to kind of hand it back to you and welcome you to the call, and just, I don't know if you want to say something first about what you've seen as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's interesting hearing what you were saying about the sort of things you're getting in the US, and we're getting very much the same sort of drivers showing in the European region. And just then you were talking about the need for a company internally to try and scale out, deal with the problems, but without hiring lots more staff. Well, there's another side to that as well, and actually, we've been dealing very recently with a business. I mean, they're a global multinational. They're in the healthcare business. Now, what they've realized is that their business model needs to change. It's okay selling materials and systems and tools for healthcare, but actually now what healthcare wants is to add a service to that. So we're now adding data management into that. They want to have not just imaging machines, but they want you to then control and supply those images, add the data around it, flow that data to the right clinicians who need to make the decisions. And so there's a whole workflow there that this healthcare company wanted to get involved with. And this is really where the rest of their future business is. The future is not so much in making tools and equipment. The future is in building services. Well, that's a really interesting problem for them because they're not a service business. That's not what they do. Well, I mean, they're service in terms of maintenance and things, but not service in terms of IT service. They had a few people internally who delivered their internal IT. What they didn't have was the skills to go out to market and say, I've got a service stood up. This is ready for you to consume. As somebody who's a large hospital wants to be able to get an IT service that's really professionally delivered, got all the right processes and procedures, service management disciplines, operational management disciplines. For them to do that themselves, that would take a long time. That's going to be hard work. And I mean, we've all done this. We've been in this business for a long time. You know how long it takes to actually build that kind of quality of service delivery. It takes, just to build the tools out will take you 6-7 months because you've got to build workflow processes, you've got to set up all the monitoring, you've got to establish that, integrate it into your systems, you've then got to build all the processes and the people and time and get those workflow processes down to level 4 where everybody knows exactly what they're doing. It takes a lot of time and a lot of cost. And also, of course, you've got to hire the bodies. So there's a lot of people cost in that. Well, that puts a lot of weight on your business case right up front, where you've got to go out, do all of that work. You're slow to market because you've got months of build before you actually sell anything to any customers. And that, of course, is just not a great position to be in. So they're a customer who came back to us and said, well, actually, you're already established in this. You've got the tools. You've got best of breed, automatic, autonomic fault resolution and so on, things that actually are way ahead of the curve in terms of what can be done. We want that. We want to be able to take that on board and build our service on top of what you've already proven works and works really well. And so we're actually taking them from zero to really a very mature IT delivery service provider to those hospitals in a matter of 90 days. So it's that quick to get to start delivering, level 4, level 5 maturity services straight to your customers. And that's what really attracted them. And of course, also from a business perspective, it's scalable. They only pay for what they're using right now. As they sell more customers, they scale out. Fantastic. And so that makes the business work much more effectively. So I'm seeing that as the kind of thing. IT is now mainstream in business and mainstream in solving these business problems. And so that drives a different behavior. Another example, you're talking about risk and manage risk. And this is a classic of a business that has risk in terms of IT, and that's a big multinational oil producer, oil and gas company, energy sector. You think about the nature of their business. They have oil rigs in the North Sea. They have oil platforms that are in some fairly dangerous places in the world. North Africa, the Middle East. Some of those countries are difficult places to get to. Physically, they're remote. They're not pleasant places to live very often. On an oil rig, you're very remote a lot of the time. If you're in the middle of some of the sort of Iraq or places like that, they're quite dangerous places to be. Difficult to get IT professionals who want to go out there and spend time working there. Yeah. So they need a different model. They need that different model that lets them go, well, actually, how do I run this without needing those professionals on the ground, so I can leave relatively low-skilled people who perhaps local to those oil rigs, local to those refining places, to do simple tasks, but leave the high-level, high-skilled stuff back in an automatic manner so that we can manage that remotely. Well, that's a tricky thing. Remote management is not simple, and people who've done it know this. I mean, it seems simple enough to just log into a server and fix it. That's not all there is to it. Doing it really professionally, really effectively, and securely. And remember, from a hacker's point of view, hacking an oil rig would be fantastic. So you've got to do it securely, professionally. You've got to have good processes. And if you think of the impact, if you had an oil rig that had its IT systems down, that stops production. That's millions of dollars an hour. Just stopping that production. So, it's a very high-risk platform, and you've got to make sure the uptime's good. So you want to have the best possible service. So when we went to them and talked about the way we do it, they were really interested in the speed that we can achieve with resolution times. The fact that we can resolve things autonomically means we can turn around and go, we'll do it in, typical fault fix could be done in 15 minutes. 60% of them done automatically through automatic systems. That was a huge change. And the fact we had a really well-established remote monitoring system, a remote management system, and we took so much workload off the guy on the ground, it meant that they really found that an attractive proposition. And that is a great way to change IT and take what was a problem environment and make it into something that actually runs as well as if it was in your backyard in your normal data center.
It's interesting. I mean, Alex, as you know, right? I spent 5 years in Asia, right? And it's recently moving to the US. So it's really interesting to see that what you talk about, what John's mentioned, and what Chris mentioned at the beginning is the same, no matter where in the world you are. I mean, the challenges are similar. But Alex, you hit on some interesting points there. Building processes, hiring staff. The tools, it's obviously more complex than buying the tools, but what if I've got some of this stuff in place already? What do I do then? Do I continue down that path, or do I look at alternatives, or do I integrate? What's your view based on what are the options for our clients when you've been talking with them?
Well, one of the great things about the way our service works is it's quite modular, and so you've got the opportunity to look at different parts that are working well and go, well, actually maybe that's best left as it is. And perhaps you only need a light level of support there. But in other areas, you may want a different level of support. I mean, good example, perhaps not just in terms of tools that are out there. If you looked at different parts of the business, if you're in dev test, there's no way your developers want a heavy, highly controlled environment with strong change management. Because if you do that, every 10 minutes they're going to be asking for a change. They're going to be asking for another server to be rebooted or created or whatever, because that's what development's like. They want to create something quickly, put some new code together, test it, put it in, move it on to QA. They don't really want that tightly controlled environment. So actually a level of monitoring which really is just, can you keep the uptime there? Can you fix faults when they occur? Make sure that platform's up, but actually leave the rest to us, because the developers do their own thing. And that suits them perfectly. But actually, if you then move over to the operations side and you've got a proper production business system, completely different. Now you want it locked down. You want the full process. Now you want to make sure that change control is really tight. And also you want to start bringing in some of the other tools in the ITIL armory. Capacity management, really important. If you're in the production system, it's okay in dev test if it's running a bit slow because you haven't got quite as much RAM as you wanted. Not ideal, but you can live with it. But when you're ever in production, you've got to know that, and you've got to know before it happens. So you want to monitor those, and you want really good capacity management. You want really good problem management that gives you that predictable, consistent, high availability and performance. And that is the sort of thing you do by a higher level service.
Okay, interesting. It's good that it's just really interesting to see how you're sort of articulating some of the challenges in the client's environment, then relating it back to the challenges on the ground too. So it's we're hearing the whole gamut. But I want John mentioned a couple of things too, and I don't mind. John, you mentioned a little bit around this dashboard, right? We've had dashboards in IT for a long time, right? Haven't we? I mean, when you mention getting business value from a dashboard, what do you actually mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first I'd like to say that as the only guy with the American accent, I'm doing my best to sound smart today. So I just want to... But no, it's a good question, right? So the idea of a dashboard and what does that mean? Because companies have been talking about that for a long time. So I'd say for us, our view of how to drive better value from a dashboard is how to give business level information, right? So we have the fortune of being able to develop a dashboard that has been built with our customers in mind. So giving a high-level view at a business level of performance of IT infrastructure. So I know Alex just was talking about the idea of having consistent uptime and availability. That's key for our customers. Well, if the lights aren't all green on a dashboard, then you need to be able to figure out where to go from there, right? So our concept behind it is to deliver a dashboard based on workload, based on business environment, and then if it's not green, what's wrong? So being able to drill down from there and being able to go down to the individual components that allows IT to have a much faster return to operations if there are issues. And And really with that, because of our automation capabilities, the back-end automation capabilities, we deliver customers with really a 50% faster return to operations when there are issues. So I would say, going back to your original question, Stu, is the dashboard is there to provide a top-level view of an underlying complex infrastructure. So when I was talking earlier about complexity and how do we remove complexity to the best of our ability, and that's by really taking the data, aggregating it, and delivering it to a business from a business point of view.
Right. Okay. Have you got a couple of examples of that, or any particular instances from clients that spring to mind?
Well, I'd say let's just use an example of the current one of our current clients. So the idea is that they're building an environment that's starting with us with a single big data environment. And this data environment will be specifically built. It's built on a Hadoop platform, and it will be their infrastructure that we're providing for them as a service. This is really just their first step into this environment. So as they build out their environment with us, they're moving more workloads to us. So their model is, let's become more of the business folks. Let's be the analysts for our business, and let's offload any portions of our environments that really don't have business differentiation. So as they pick workloads to move to us, each one of those workloads will be identified as its own component, right? And there may be some interdependencies between these components as well. So the environment will give you a view of each component on its own, and then beneath that, the interdependencies will be mapped. So if there's cross application, cross workload requirements, or I'd say infrastructure that support that, you'll be able to view and control that as well. So I would say an example of reduced complexity is having workloads or business performance components being displayed as a single pane of glass that then can be drilled down based on customers as they scale out their IT to meet their clients' demand. So that's really the plan for this one client of ours. It's going to be building out additional workloads over time, and it'll still be in one single pane glass.
Oh, fantastic, fantastic. And just a reminder, if anyone has any questions, please use the hashtag #DDHangouts, and we'll try and get to those. And I think one person has commented, and they're asking you, Chris, do you always wear a suit, or do you always dress so nicely for 3 a.m.?
Yeah, I saw that comment from Frank. I was trying not to laugh at the same time, but I really like my bedwear at this time of the morning, so I thought I would suit up, do the right thing.
Yeah, it's nice. It's I see you got the curtains drawn and the lights dimmed as well. You're really bringing that sort of really emphasising it this late at night or early in the morning. So
got the mood lighting going, so I'm probably starting to scare a few people right about now. But anyway.
Hey, well, look, Chris, I mean, you mentioned some real interesting things around some of the challenges that organisations are facing, really sort of deep dive into some of the questions that we get asked, right? Given every organisation has those unique challenges, they have obviously different needs and goals. How would clients go about exploring the different options available to them, around, I guess, data center management, how they manage that, how to drive that business value through IT operations?
Yeah, good question. I think for me, I'm really big on that consultative approach with clients. I mean, we all know that if we engage at that level as a trusted advisor, that's really important. And I think as John and Alex have been talking, I think it's really interesting to pick up on some of the terminology and some of the conversations we're having these days around the world. Alex talked about looking at data management now, and we're having application-based conversations. John was talking about DevOps and agile, so we're having quite a number of different conversations above the infrastructure now. So I think the more we can do that, it establishes our credibility to be able to become a bit of a trusted advisor, which can then lead to an assessment-based approach. And we've got some great tools and methodologies when you look at the data center development model and the data center practice. That's a great way to engage with a client and start to understand the different challenges they've got. And obviously we've got that approach around understanding current state. How do we get to future state? What's the roadmap to get there? Develop the cost justification and help the client build out the business case. But I think traditionally we've taken a very technology-led approach to that, which has been our strength as an organisation. I think the key now is we've got to really look at that operational environment and make sure we're building that into the assessment approach. So, as Alex articulated really well, we've got to look at the assumptions that the client's people are delivering. What's their process maturity look like, and what tools they're using. And as we start to look at that in an assessment, we can start to understand the pain points, and then you can build out that operational roadmap in line with hopefully the technology roadmap that you're already doing around the transform agenda. And we really can then give the customer a powerful end-to-end strategy in both areas through life cycle approaches at work. And as we understand the operational roadmap ourselves, we can then map our services against those pain points and show the client how we can resolve their issues through our management tools, our automation, through our services. So, I think to help us with that conversation, I love the way that our business has been laying out our services against the IT service management framework. I think that's been a really powerful approach in the market from us. And it's the operational language of the customer, right? I mean, it helps us learn the language along the way of sales, that the clients are really engaging around it because they really understand it. I think that's been really powerful to help us explore and understand our data center management automation becomes our clients.
Yeah, fantastic. We've still got a few minutes. So, Chris, is there anything you want to share or with our audience, or any sort of questions you got for anybody else while we're here?
No, I haven't got any questions right now, but I mean, it's been fantastic to collaborate with the guys around the Hangout, looking to do a lot more of that, and just hearing those examples from around the world. I want to follow up with the guys and understand some of those customer examples better. I think one of the powerful things for us in the market is, sales is about storytelling, right? So the more I can understand Alex's examples and John's examples and your examples, Stuart, around the world, it really globalises us in front of the customer in terms of that storytelling and those powerful examples we're starting to bring through in those different conversations.
Oh, for sure. What about yourself, Alex? Any sort of comments you want to leave with the folks?
I think the closing comment for me is actually to reiterate what John was saying around the portal, and that has been a huge change. The quality that's in that managed center portal, and I mean, you can go out there and be in front of anybody in the world and say, look at this, and it is best in breed, and had some huge effort put into that, and I'm really proud of what they've achieved there, because there's nothing like having a IT org go from just being able to monitor individual components and see your classic green, amber, red, going instead into the business processes and be able to show the logic of how this all stacks up to saying this supports this IT service, and that IT service is the underpinning of this business process or this business division. And for a customer, they look at that and go, okay, that's really interesting. That allows me to show what the value of it to the people who are line of business leaders.
That's good. Interesting. What about yourself, John?
Yeah, absolutely. So as we talk today, and I agree with you guys, really enjoyed the conversation. The thing that I'm most excited about, I think, for what we all face going forward in the business of IT, is that we are the business now, right? So everything we do directly relates to business outcomes, and I'm excited about the fact that the changes in the world, we talked a little bit before this call started, and the technology that we use on a daily basis, we're across the world from each other, and that this technology enables people to live better lives. So, and I love the idea that business outcomes lead to a situation where people can live better lives. And I think that when we look at all the underlying components that are complex and challenging and risky and sometimes need to be more agile, when we look at it from a high level, delivering business results with the technologies that we have today and in the future, I'm just excited about as an industry, our ability to deliver for our businesses and for the customers that we work with on a regular basis, and helping to change lives through that. So yeah, I'd say I'm just excited about the fact that we impact people's lives individually in what we do, and it's a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's awesome. I think, as you mentioned, right, all our clients, that we've been talking about, and I think pretty much anyone is looking for business outcomes, right? I mean, whether it be in the medical industry or remote solutions for oil and gas that Alex mentioned, whether it be what you mentioned, John, around big data for aerospace or infrastructuring and banking and finance, or even storage solutions in pharmaceuticals, right? All these organizations are adapting to the changes in the business environments. They're having to transform IT, and the next generation data center is enabling that. To some of the points that I think Chris mentioned earlier. But even with all that, people are still experiencing those operational challenges which they need to solve, as well as have that ability to manage that next generation data center of the future. So everyone's got options. There's plenty of options, I think, and there's alternatives. And I suppose the question really is, as a client, what are those options? How do I evaluate those options, and how do I select and implement those options for my organization, right? And I think that really comes down to then, what is the scope of the problem? What's the scope of the problem I'm trying to solve? Have I already got those advanced policies defined? What are the skills of my people like? Is there already automation in place? And if there is, do I want to finish that? And if I do, how do I keep up, as it includes cloud and other things down the track? And if not, if automation is not in place, do I understand the benefits that would bring with regards to process, efficiency, skills, staffing, and so on? So have you created a platform? And then, I guess, finally, have you created a platform for that improved interaction with the business? Or have you locked yourself in from a business up or tech down perspective? So businesses are transforming. There's an ever-increasing focus on delivering that business value. We know it's a balance between the business, the IT transformation or project side of IT, and the IT operations. Ultimately, the question is, do you have the time and do you have the budget to focus on all three? And if you don't, how do you prioritize and where do you want to spend your time going forward? So with that, I'd like to say thank you very much for participating today in the Google Hangout. And I'd also like to thank my colleagues John, Alex, and Chris, and particularly Chris. You can go and grab some sleep now if you like. And
Cheers, guys.
thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.